so great to have the High Sheriff, who already has such a track record in volunteering. And obviously you heard all the organisations that David's involved in. Also, I'm very pleased because he comes from Barry as well as me, so I feel the Vale of Morgan's well represented today. But also, there's a lot of friends and colleagues and volunteers from across Cardiff and the Vale of Morgan. And of course, this is such a great event. And to thank Jeremy, because I think practically everyone in this room has got several responsibilities and functions and volunteering activities, because you're the sort of people who do not just one thing, but lots of things. And of course, Jeremy, last time I met him, was as chair of the Race Equality First, which of course covers Cardiff and the Vale of Morgan. But I know also he works for VCS in Cardiff. So again, lots of people who work in the voluntary sector in a paid capacity are also volunteers and trustees. And we must remember that it's very important that all of the organisations that are represented here today, as well as the statutory organisations, of course, you need people to volunteer to be trustees, as well as doing the kind of hands-on volunteering. And I mean, that's a very strong message, I think, for today, is that we need people to put themselves forward to play those important roles. So, I mean, I think that for me, coming here today was an important engagement because I came from the voluntary sector into public life and politics. So, I mean, obviously, I have to say that I recall way back the voluntary community service in Cardiff, where I used to live, and I represented the Riverside ward in the old county of South Glamorgan for many years, very involved in that community. But at the time I was also working and helping develop Welsh Women's Aid, for example, and the Tenant Participation Advisory Service, and very engaged in local communities. But I said, are you still in Charles Street? No, not in Charles Street, but I remember that office, some of you might call upstairs, but now you're in a very good, accessible place in Brunel House with lots of other organisations. But I really want to congratulate those organisations who are, in the lead today, if you like. For me, it's the Vale Volunteer Bureau, who do fantastic work, and I'll say a couple of words about that, but also VCS in Cardiff. And I think just to mention a few examples of what the Vale Volunteer Bureau has been able to do to help community groups and organisations in the Vale who would not exist, who couldn't function without those volunteers. And also to say that, of course, many of those groups do manage to secure a bit of funding from the council, either the Vale or Cardiff Council, but it's a tough time in terms of funding. And you can imagine my other hat today, which I'm not here officially as Finance Minister, but obviously it's with me all the time in terms of the challenges and pressures that we're under in terms of trying to see what we can fund and how we can continue to support. But it's so good to see that clubs like Castaways Club, that meets twice a week in the Castleland Community Centre in the heart of Barry, was set up by elderly people themselves who were losing the place they used to meet on Dale House, and they decided they were going to carry on. So they started meeting in a pub and got fish and chips from the fish and chip shop next door, and eventually, with a bit of support from myself and volunteers, and of course recruiting volunteers, they now run their own luncheon club. They run it themselves in the heart of Barry, and they've managed to get a bit of funding as well from the Vale of Morgan Council and Barry Town Council. Atala Row, the Women's Aid group in the Vale, very important, again, needing volunteers, but also being able to access a bit of funding from Lloyd's TSB Foundation. You will all be involved in trying to get bits of funding. I mean, it is important that we share resources, and that's where the Volunteer Bureau and VCVS in the Vale help with funding advice and information. We still can get a bit of money from the Welsh Government through grants like the Community Facilities Activities Project grant, an awful long title, but basically it's money to help things like in Barry, the 2nd and 4th Barry Scouts Hut Hall for refurbishment, and a lot of refurbishments of those kinds have taken on. I just think, finally, also in terms of examples of important volunteering activities and group, another part of my constituency, Dinas Powys, we have a wonderful group called Dinas Powys Voluntary Concern, which has been going for years, 40 years of serving their community. And if any of you come from Dinas Powys, I don't know if anyone's here from Dinas Powys, you will know that Dinas Powys Voluntary Concern, because they do actively engage in their community. They have a minibus, they take people to hospital, to shopping, they have a part of the Friendly Advantage befriending, and it's great to see representation here from the befriending Friendly Advantage. Backed, of course, by the big lottery, so we mustn't forget the big lottery is very important in terms of sources of funding. But, I mean, there are opportunities at a community level and in terms of the interests that we all have to volunteer. So I think just in terms of those final points about, you know, the challenges to the voluntary sector, it is the 30th anniversary of Volunteers Week. And it is very important that we don't just say, oh, it's all great what you're all doing today. You know, it's every day that we've got to acknowledge your work. And at the moment, I'm doing a bit of a tour around Wales to talk to people in the front line about what their priorities are for what is a decreasing budget, unfortunately. A decreasing budget from London to Wales, and then, of course, that means we have difficult choices in terms of our funding. And it's very interesting how people say how important the volunteering sector is, and that's people in the front line of statutory services. But also to recognise that there are new needs emerging and new important developments for volunteering. So I would say that, for example, the Cardiff Vale Credit Union, which we're all part of, and hopefully a lot of us here are members of it, because it's very important that everybody joins the credit union, is vital, even more vital today for people struggling with their finances. And we've got a shop front in Barry, and just recently Natalie from the Vale Volunteer Bureau and I were in St Athan opening an outreach post for the credit union alongside the very successful food cooperative. It's not a food bank, obviously we've got food banks as well, but the food cooperatives which are developing are very important. Again, everybody can join a food cooperative. And the one in St Athan that night, there were 40 bags of fruit and veg stir-fry being distributed to people living in the St Athan community and joining the credit union at the same time. And Natalie, I was able to congratulate the volunteers that you've got to help run not only the credit union but the food cooperative. And I think we must look to all the new needs, the strong needs that we have in our communities. And those of us who are elected, privileged to be elected locally, nationally, have got to listen to people, to what their needs are, to work and support organisations like the Vale Volunteer Bureau and VCS, and really reflect that in those important decisions that we make. So much to praise, many to congratulate. And, you know, when I see the young people in the Vale who come forward to get involved in volunteering, and pay tribute to Christian, who helps with our Dish Out the Dosh. We've got a similar scheme in Cardiff, where young people themselves come forward to volunteer. And at the last awards session, we had 49 young people receive their 50-hour certificates. That's 50, they'd all done 50 hours of voluntary work. 27 received 100-hour certificates, and a further 16 had completed their 200 hours awards of excellence. And all of those young people feel that they've done something that's going to help them. It's opened their eyes, and it's going to help them in terms of their futures. And two young people, Max Williams and Candice Rinivas, have both been awarded Wales Volunteer of the Year awards. So I'm delighted to congratulate them. So I will stop there because I could go on, but I think we can now conclude our two presentations and move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.